Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. In today's episode of Friday Morning Ramblings, we're going to talk about cool weather gardening, fall gardening, but also kind of starting to plan your garden for next year. So for example, inside I grew a lot of onions. They did really well, but I want more space in the garden. And what I do know is that the deer, when they're out here, I've got plenty of evidence, tons of deer chewing down stuff. They leave the leeks alone right there. They leave the onions alone. So I'm pulling out all my leeks from the garden, onions from the garden next year, and they're all going to be put outside. And in fact, I may build some other beds just for onions because I really enjoyed them. That will give me more space inside the garden, so I'll be using the protected space a little bit better, putting out the vegetables the critters here, really don't care about. So that will be great. Deer came back, chewed down my beans and stuff like that, so that's just not going to work. So you also have to think about what isn't going to work. If you're trying to garden outside, or you don't have a fence outside of your current fence, or you don't have a fence for your garden, and the deer keep showing up or animals keep showing up, you have to start thinking about a plan to take care of them. Here's a beautiful spider web. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if we can angle it. I'm always amazed at how a spider can get a web all the way across, this is where we're going, all the way over to here, and really support a structure like that. So I'm going to keep this up because that spider worked really hard on building that. I also wanted to talk about soil structure, microbes, soil life. There's been a lot of talk about how if you don't disturb the soil, you get stronger and healthier plants, and there's a lot of truth to that. It doesn't mean that if you have clay soil or sandy soil or rocky soil or problematic soil that you can't turn it, dig it, amend it, and really kind of build it up, kind of doing it with a shovel, however you want, for 2 or 3 years to get it into shape. Once that plot is in shape, you can go to something like this. This is my no-dig garden, and I'm just dropping down 4 to 6 inches of compost on here every year, growing plants in there, and they're doing really well. The tomato that grew itself, grew from nature, just seeded itself, grew there. Poblanos are doing well. I'll talk more about that in a second. It's got a duck under there. Watermelons are doing well. The potatoes that came out of here were wonderful. It's a good space. But you might be a new gardener and you don't have tons of homemade compost like I have, and to bring it in from other places, it can be really expensive. It's hard to find good compost. So take what you hear on the internet about don't disturb the soil, soil life, whether or not you can turn clay soil, what you should amend, how much compost you can use. Take it kind of with a grain of salt, realizing that information has to really be blended with the growing conditions that you have. And you can always work to get to something like this where it's no dig, but if you have to dig and turn your garden in the beginning, that's perfectly fine. I just don't want new gardeners to feel like it's an impossible task because they have to follow all these rules. The rule is create pretty good soil, put some seeds in there, take care of them, you're going to get a harvest, and then you get better and better every year. So some of the idea is that a soil structure that's left alone sets up, well, it doesn't set up, it leaves nature to do its thing. You get a nicer, really diverse, undisturbed layers of microbes and soil life that kind of have a symbiotic relationship with the roots of your plants. The plants are stronger, they can better fight off disease, they can better fight off pests, and that is true. However, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get pests and disease. That's going to vary garden to garden. If that were true, before human beings came in, all these plants grew by themselves, they grew in undisturbed soil, the pests and diseases would have been killed off, in theory. So don't go with the idea that if you do things exactly as stated in people's comments, like if you plant in soil that's not disturbed, your plants will get no diseases. People say that the plants therefore will get no diseases, they'll be able to fight off pests. They're going to have problems, but they're going to be stronger and better. Here's an example. No dig garden. This soil has been undisturbed except for what I throw on top of it for a good 3 years. Self-seeded, some die off on the bottom. That's only because it's dark in there, not a lot of light gets in there. Not much disease on here at all. I can see actually a little bit starting to show up. We had 50-degree temperatures at night, so the tomatoes are getting a little bit beat up. But this is generally a beautiful plant. Never been sprayed, healthy, super productive. I can't even keep up with harvesting. But it's still going to get diseases and problems. So don't think that when you get a disease or problem in your garden that you necessarily did something wrong. Here's a good example. These are all poblanos. The plants right here are doing beautifully. I mean, look at how nice and strong and large the poblanos are right in there. When you come down here, the poblanos here, oop, just walked into that web. Let me duck under it. They're kind of small. The leaves are light. There's some disease on here. So in the same soil, the same variety of poblanos, they're doing better up there. Some problems over here. I'm not even sure why, but I just don't want you to feel, especially if you're a new gardener, that you are doing something wrong. Gardening is really about getting out, digging the earth, planting, learning, and just developing a routine that works for you and works in your gardening zone. It's coming around here. Sweet potatoes look good. You can see evidence of the deer prints right in there. Carrots are doing well. It's the 15th or 16th of September. So these have been growing 2 weeks. They're all up. They all look great. All right, let's go inside the garden. I don't think this tour will be super long because not much is really changing. Probably a squirrel was in my garden, knocked the tomato off of there. So as we walk through, there's going to be dust on my leafy greens and some of the plants that aren't flowering. I want to kind of make sure I kill off the white butterfly that lays the green worm caterpillar eggs really on my kale, Brussels, collards, broccoli, cauliflower. I want that gone. With the cooler weather coming, that butterfly is going to start dying off, and I just don't want remains of eggs laying on here. I want healthy green plants. So I'm putting a lot of work in now before harvesting to get any problems under control. Spinach looks good. The peas are coming up. Let's go right into this little pocket. And I think it's been about 2 weeks. I mean, the kale in here is going to be absolutely beautiful. These are in grow bags that I sell at my seed shop, and they look really, really good. I might come out and dust them again. I dusted them. There's a little bit left on there. You know, when I come out here, look, I just saw, I believe, a white fly. So you really want to inspect. Maybe that was my imagination. You really want to inspect. There it is, right down there. Let's see if I can. Oh, that was a white fly. It was right there. So they're coming in. So I'm going to give them a light spray on the underside. Just keep the pests and disease under control. That being said, you want to do exactly what I did. Is you want to come out regularly, every couple of days, inspect the leaves, really take a look at your plants. And if you can find the problems like I did there, one or two little white flies, you can get them under control much more quickly. Container's doing pretty well. Tomatoes have come back. I mean, just look, green tomatoes, middle of September. I just checked my weather. Look, this cherry tomato totally has come back. The old parts are dying off. I'll remove those cherry tomatoes and I'll have a chance to get more before that first frost comes. All the warm weather crops are frost sensitive, so as soon as a frost comes in, it's going to be a problem, and that's okay. I'm a little bit tomatoed out. I've froze stuff, I've saved stuff, so I'm doing pretty good. Peas are coming up. Kohlrabi is coming up. Everything's doing really well. Sweet potatoes are getting plenty of energy. I'll be harvesting the sweet potatoes when that first frost comes, kills the leaves back. Carrots that I planted back in July, right in there. Radishes waves are coming up. And these are the first wave of peas that I planted back using the shade cloth right over here. Kept the soil cool from the August sun, and I'm going to have peas in a couple of days. These are going to be right to size, so I'll be able to start harvesting off of here. I was really experimenting this year with shade cloth, so instead of just doing a couple, I may do a whole section in peas, and in the middle of September next year I'm going to have peas already. And then as they kind of fade out, hopefully they keep going because it's going to stay cool, I'll have other waves coming up just like that. The benefit of using the shade cloth planting in later July, early August is that you get the peas right now. Watermelon's doing really well. Talk to you about, just focusing on a couple of plants. I think if we look in there, it is right down in the center. It's 2 watermelon plants. These are sitting on dish racks so that the weight of that watermelon doesn't pull itself off of the stem. I had that happen a couple of times. Beautiful melon right in there. That's 2 right there. And there's a third one, 3 over there. And I always say there's one on the other side. And there's not, because I actually kicked it off when I was coming over here to the shed. Brussels sprouts, doing pretty good. Leaves look great. Again, I'm putting the dust on there. And since I saw a white fly, and right here, that's a white fly pattern. Webbing on there. So I have to come out today, tomorrow, spray the undersides of these. White flies have been really pretty much a pain this year in my garden. They're usually around, but they haven't been like this, so we'll see. So I'll get out the peppermint oil spray. I'll take care of that. Butternut squash is all going to get pulled out. I always like just showing, and I have some sitting on my counter now. 1, a little one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 behind that post. There's probably another 6 or 8 over there, and then some have grown over onto my compost pile. The vines have kept going. So plenty of butternut squash. Another thing that's cool is the tomatoes right there all self-seeded themselves. They started growing late, really late in July, and look how big they are. So I'll be getting cherry tomatoes off of there. Your garden is going to want to produce. So if you're brand new and you struggle a little bit, don't worry. You're going to have plenty of production out of your garden, even if you have a hard time. Here's an example of some of the dust that I put down. This is cauliflower. This pattern right here, I don't know what that is, but it's nothing to worry about. You look for it to be on all the leaves. It's just probably got some sort of burn on there. It may have just come like that. Some of these I bought from Transplants. Again, you're looking for the white flies. Things look pretty good. Lettuce is coming up. So the temperature, so this morning it was 51 degrees. Today it's going to be 80. Next week it's going to be, in the evenings it's going to be in the 60s. It's going to be in the upper 80s, 80s next week. So the warmth is still here, but the garden is really in transition. It's getting cooler nights, the soil's getting cooler. All of the cool weather crops are really starting to take off. With the colder nights, sometimes a different kind of fungus comes in on your basil. This still looks great. This is one planting that's 100 days old now that have been doing really, really well right in there. The old beets are taking off. Here are some of the leeks I was talking about. I won't be planting leeks in there anymore. They're all going to go on the outside of the garden. The next wave and final wave of cucumbers, you can see them. They're doing really well. You can see a cucumber right there. These were dusted last night. They have to be washed off now that it's morning and the pollinators are starting to come out. But I'm going to keep the dust, and it's been actually just sitting on the brassicas, the broccoli, the cauliflowers, all that kind of stuff. This broccoli group is looking wonderful. And I can see, actually it's going to be hard to see, but there's a white fly right there. There's an egg from the cabbage looper probably. There are more eggs. So when you kind of practice, you get to see pretty easily the eggs and stuff like that. All these little holes means there are cabbage worms somewhere on here. So again, time to spray the undersides with peppermint oil spray, with neem oil, whatever you want to use. Radishes are doing well. Everything is really coming back. Some of the tomatoes are starting to die off. Some of the tomatoes are liking the cool weather and coming back, but I have plenty. So my goal is always to keep some of my tomato plants going well into September. And it's been pretty much successful. More green tomatoes. I mean, so you know, I'm happy with that. Back here, you can see that the asparagus is starting to brown out and die. So come June, you let a lot of the asparagus spears grow. They get fern-like, just like this, 4 feet tall, 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall, bringing the energy to the root systems of the plant. Next year I'll have great asparagus. So right about now, I'm going to cut all of this back. You can see some orange seeds on there. Asparagus seeds like crazy everywhere. So I don't want them to dry, fall off, and start sending asparagus up all over my garden. So I'm going to cut all this back. You're just waiting for about mid-September, later September. Remove all the growth. The root systems will be fine. Next year you're going to get a lot of asparagus. Peppers, the next wave of Facing Heaven peppers are ready to come out. There's at least 40 or 50 on there. So the warm crops are progressing. They're hanging in there. Pretty soon, when the temperatures during the day are in the 60s, you're breaching into the 40s at night, all these cool crops are going to start dying back. Leaves are going to start falling off. You might see more diseases and stuff like that. But so far, so good. Here's another area that gets dust and then dust wash off. I know I talk about this a lot, but if you're going to use insect dust, Captain Jack's organic, 7 not organic, whatever you want to use, they kill good and bad insects. It doesn't matter how they're made. So the dust is on here late at night or later in the evening, keeping the flea beetles under control. This will get washed off now, and you can see just a lot of eggplant, or a lot of, yeah, eggplant are growing. So pretty good. Struggled with this area. I'm going to move my eggplant next year. I'm not sure why they struggled here, but I'm going to go put them in one of the beds over there. Maybe where I am pulling out onions and leeks and putting them on the outside, because deer will come and chew this down. They don't always eat your tomatoes or your eggplant, but just because they're in that nightshade family doesn't mean they don't eat it, because the tomato plants I have on the outside are chewed down. So if there's a limited supply of food around, the deer will eat your tomato plant. So don't go with that myth that because the leaves are supposed to be poisonous, deer, leave them alone. They won't. They will chew down your pepper plants, your eggplant, your tomato plants. They eat just about anything. The only thing that I haven't seen them eat are onions, garlic, and leeks. Let's walk over to the space over here. This is all going to have to be redesigned. Like I was saying before, I just love the blackberries. The canes here are beautiful, 12 feet tall. They've taken over this space. They've been here for 4 years, and they've only moved over to here. I'm going to keep them. You know, next year I'll worry about moving them. But I really like blackberries, so I want as many as I can get. A couple of flats that I started to kind of get a jump, because this space was not set up. It wasn't cleared out. In my garden, you can still see I have warm crops growing. So you can start, as I've been saying, in these flats, and when the space is ready, you can just drop them in. So here's something interesting. These have been in here for, let's see, they went in on September 6th or 7th. So they've been in about, let's just say, 7 or 8 days. The plants right there were the same size as the ones in the container. You can see how the container plants are smaller because their roots are constrained. They actually need a little bit of water. I forgot them out here. Once you get your transplants into the earth and you have plenty of room for the roots to grow, the plants are going to take off. Don't keep your plants sitting in these containers too long, because they become little bonsai plants. Same thing with the peas. The peas over here, everything that you see, I can also see some garlic coming up. The peas there were this size 7 or 8 days ago. So as soon as you get those transplants in, water them in with a water-soluble fertilizer. I like to use fish emulsion or AgroThrive. They're going to take off, and you can kind of just let them go. You don't have to over-worry about your cool weather crops, really. I've cleaned out this area. I may move this to bring in an extra bed of some sort. This is my bug hotel, and it really works. I mean, frogs are in there, toads are in there, different good insects are in there. Maybe I'll clean it up and grow some different plants, but I want to open up this whole space so there's more airflow. Got to get in there with the weed whacker, take out the asparagus. You can see how tall it is. Figure it out. Those are projects for next year, but I really want to have my garden cleaned up by, say, the end of November, when everything is kind of starting to freeze around here. So come spring, it's a happy place. I can just lightly weed it. I can get started. Going back to what I was talking about, you know, not disturbing the soil. I'm going to be going into my 5th year of growing. My beds are prepped. I'm not going to really turn my soil. I'm going to drop compost down because I have it, and I'm going to stick with kind of a no-dig style throughout here. You can dig and then become a no-dig. And then you could be a no-dig and maybe there's a problem and you dig again, and then you go back to no-dig. You don't have to be 100% something 100% of the time. You can change it up. I'm just able now to put on compost, some organic fertilizers, and plant. And that's what I'm going to do, because that top really 12 inches of soil is really good now, and that's what you're kind of shooting for, is really getting that top 6, 8, 10 inches of soil loose, filled with organic matter. Get your season growing, or get your plants growing for a couple of seasons, and then you can go to a no-dig version. If you're in an area where you have just beautiful earth and you can drop down some cardboard, 8 inches of compost, and plant, go ahead and do that, but most of us can't do that. This was a success. I've talked about this before. That is the ginger. The ginger is just doing really well. I think in a couple of weeks we'll be harvesting it, and I'll do the next Friday morning ramblings, more of a harvesting video and tour at the same time. But I'm letting the ginger right in that space get kind of maximum growth. They're not going to like the cold weather, but the roots get to really plump up right now, and it was a whole success, I think. I've been trying to figure out how to best grow ginger. This is my 3rd or 4th year, and I finally figured it out. More ginger right there, and that's a 22-gallon container. The bottom is not open. There's holes in there for drainage, but the ginger's growing really well. Fruit section, excellent. Overgrown, but who doesn't like really strong growth? So I'll prune that out. You've seen all the plants in here. This was a success. I just wanted to show you the number of peppers that came from, and I've been harvesting out of here too, from really, well, that one should have been picked. So like Sun Scald comes in, bleaches it, you can actually cut that and eat that off. But all the peppers that are coming in here from overplanting in this Vegega metal raised bed. I'm affiliated with them. I highly recommend them. You can check out the video description if you want more information. But I put in, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I thought I put in more. I did. So I have 12 planting holes in here, but some of the peppers have 2 plants in a hole. So there's about 16 plants in this small space. And just look at all the green peppers. Purple peppers, red peppers. I mixed it up with yellows, oranges, reds. So this is just a great way. And my point is that the plants in here aren't spaced out, you know, 2 feet apart. They are really packed in there. And I want to make sure I'm telling you the right number of plants. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 14. So some of them aren't doubled up, but there's exactly 14 plants in this little space, and it's really, really been successful. Now, I could raise this up. I could put some posts around the outside, and I can get some painter's black or painter's clear plastic, wrap it around here, clothespin the top, and make a little hothouse, and maybe extend the season when the frosts are rolling in, and keep getting peppers out of here until it just gets too cold and that you need a heat source to keep it warm. But that's one of the reasons I like these raised beds. You can really adapt them for all kinds of different growing styles. So this is a success. And then going back to the idea of, you know, figuring out what you want to do next year, I'm going to raise the soil level in here. Because the diseases came in, I'm going to start spraying a little bit sooner next year. Keep the diseases off, even though I took care of it. And this should be a highly productive area of green peppers. Now, because so many are coming out of here, I'm going to stop planting green peppers in other places in my garden, and I'll be able to grow different crops in there. So I'm also trying to figure out how to maximize the space. So if I can grow 14 bell pepper plants in here of different colors, it's real easy to come and manage it. Production is wonderful. I don't need to have them in other parts of my garden. Shishitos are doing extremely well. I can't talk enough about them. Now, one thing I do want to say is sometimes they're sweet, and every once in a while you get one that's kind of hot, and that's just the way they operate. So sometimes you're going to be surprised. So if you're totally against hot peppers, the shishito might surprise you. Ever-bearing strawberries, I highly recommend them. I'm getting strawberries now, middle of September. I showed you in one video on how I cleaned up this tower of strawberries. They need to be watered. I can tell the water has evaporated and has been used, and we haven't had rain for about a week now. So these have to get watered. Even though it's getting cooler, you have to make sure you keep up on the watering. This way your plants stay really nice and green, really established, and then come next year, I'm going to get even more strawberries out of here. But this tower looks, brilliant. Didn't get to this one yet. No rush. The greenery is still coming back because I have been watering, but I'll just clean up this tower. I'll clean up the tower over there. I'll have plenty of strawberries come next year. Let's just walk back this way. So I'm excited. Oh, look, there's a bunch of onions that I missed. So I'm going to take those onions and you know what? Did I even talk about that? I shot this video twice because there was a problem with it. Let's go back outside. So when you have onions laying around just like that, look at the beautiful cherry tomatoes here. These are sun sugars, absolutely delicious, and plenty, to be able to harvest right now. So I shot the video twice. I want to just show you what I do with the onions that I find that I didn't harvest or that are kind of small. There's another cucumber growing, so the cucumbers are starting to roll in. 2 more watermelon. I figured out how to kind of grow the melons in here. I'll do that next year. I won't grow as many because it was just crazy. But I found, watermelons, 1 or 2 plants in a space, keep them well watered, keep up with the sprays, they do really well. The die-off was from me not taking care of them, went back to a routine of watering, taking care of them, and all this green growth has come back. So maybe those melons will make it. Generally looking, the tomatoes look pretty good. And let's get back outside because I just want to show you. So pick up any horseradish, doing extremely well. Dust is staying on there because I was getting harlequin beetles. No flowers. It's not going to impact the pollinators. So I take all the little onions that didn't get used, maybe garlic that you didn't use or maybe you dug up like I did when you were planting your cool weather crops. So I take all of that and you can just put it right into, let me get my shadow out of here. I'm just packing it all into a little corner just like this. There's an onion I could have probably used, but all the little bulbs, pieces of garlic, just tucking them in there. Water this in, really, pack them in tightly together, and I'm just going to be growing this for the greenery. So the greenery will come up, through the fall. I'll use it in soups, salads, with scrambled eggs or whatever. It's also going to come back next year. Maybe there'll be some sort of bulb to use, but this is really to kind of use the onions and garlic that were just laying around, and I'm going to grow the greenery out of there. And I know the deer aren't going to come out here and disturb it, unlike the bean plants that were just, completely devastated. All right, I think we'll wrap up there. Hopefully you guys got into your fall gardens, and if you're in the warmer zones, the cool weather temperatures are starting to roll in, and you're going to be, moving out of that crazy heat and into, a nicer fall, hopefully. Thanks so much for watching. Next week we'll talk about prepping the beds, compost some different things, maybe do some harvesting. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com and get that fall garden planted. I think you'll really, really enjoy it as the weather cools down and the temperatures kind of give back from some of that crazy heat that's been beating us all up.